He's home in bed. He would really have preferred to be here, but he cannot be. I'm sure he sends his regards and regrets. So I would like to start off by acknowledging that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of San Francisco, and that this city was originally inhabited by the Alamu, an independent tribe of the Ohlone peoples. We would also like to acknowledge that for millennia they lived in balance with nature in this area, and that their people are still here and continue to contribute to our society. So I'm going to welcome our three excellent, seasoned Bay Area poets in a few minutes. But I'd just like to start off by telling you about a couple of events coming up next week. On Monday, June the 12th, at McCroskey Mattress Factory across the street, we're going to have a really fun, inspiring event. It will feature Alicia Garza, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter, and she'll be there reading and discussing her new book, The Purpose of Power. But she'll also be in conversation with James Tracy, local author and organizer, and he's also a co-creator of the Howard Zinn Book Fair, along with Patrick and I. And they'll be discussing coalition building in the 21st century. Incredibly important to get all of these progressive nonprofits to work together to fight the good fight. And then on Wednesday, June 14th, we're welcoming here at the Green Arcade Bettina Aptheker, who wrote Communists in Closets, Queering the History, 1930s to 1990s. An incredibly interesting book about people who were queer and communist in that period, so they had to be doubly closeted. And yet, a lot of the work they did actually led to, gay liberation, feminism, all kinds of incredibly powerful political movements. So, we're really delighted to have three poets who've, let's see, have you read here before, Eric? Yeah, I thought so. So all three poets have read here, are friends of the Green Arcade, and that's really appropriate because this is probably the last poetry reading at the Green Arcade. As you probably know, Patrick is hanging up the bookmark, and so yes, so we'll be closing the doors in mid-July. So this will be especially delightful and poignant, I'm sure, as a result. And I just have to say it's been an incredible pleasure and privilege just to welcome so many just sublimely talented poets. I wouldn't say that I was a huge poetry fan before I started working here, but after 11 years of sitting through so many, that is coming out all wrong. I'm being forced to eat my Brussels sprouts. No, that's not at all. I've been continuously inspired and delighted and moved by the poetry that we've presented here. So I thank, and some of you are in the audience tonight as well. Thank you for inspiring me and making me a huge poetry fan. So, but I would like to also ask if anyone here knows of any jobs in really cool bookstores. Let Ben and I know for the after times. And we will be selling books by Evan Kennedy, Eric Sneathen, and Susan Gevirtz. And they will, I'm sure, be delighted to inscribe them afterward. So, Evan is going to introduce the three poets, and so, Evan Kennedy.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you. I'm going to introduce the three of us. Reading first is Eric Sneathen. Eric Sneathen is a poet and queer literary historian living in Alameda. His forthcoming book, Don't Leave Me This Way, will be published by Nightboat later this summer. Following Eric is Evan Kennedy. His new book is Metamorphoses. I don't know who titles a book that. Doesn't he know the title's already taken? It springs from Ovid's epic poem to explore the slipperiness of identity in poems that shift registers from travelogue to elegy, from nature documentary to a simple record of the realities of daily life. Evan Kennedy focuses on transformation, personal and collective, in an empire in decline, in a world transfigured by ecological upheaval. It's like a fever dream over Gibbon's decline and fall. And Evan Kennedy has one foot in ancient Rome and the other in contemporary San Francisco. And then, reading third, is Susan Gevirtz. And Susan Gevirtz's Burns from Pamenar Press 2022 is a tour of documents of the unperceived, an archive of investigations staged in lyric prose, poetry, and a play. Susan Gevirtz's books of poetry include Hotel ABC 2016, Aerodrome Orion and Starry Messenger 2010, Thrall 2007, Hourglass Transcripts 2001, Black Box Cutaway 1999, Prosthesis Caesarea 1994, Taken Place 1993, and Linen Minus 1992. Susan's critical books are Coming Events, Collected Writings, and Narrative's Journey, the fiction and film writing of Dorothy Richardson. All right, please put your hands together for Eric Sneathen.
That seems about right. No? Can you hear me in the back? Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh my God. The last poetry reading at the Green Arcade got me really emotional, which is a great way to enter a poetry reading, I guess. Just this space has meant a lot. The readings at McCroskey have meant so much. You know, we are so lucky to have held you captive for 11 years, to bend you to our will. Thank you. I don't know, that feels right for poetry. You know, you get sucked in. So Syd was supposed to be here, and our hearts are with him right now. I wanted to read a piece from his book, Seldom Approaches. I had this other selection picked out, and then I remembered, oh, I'm like kind of in this book. And so, of course, my favorite part of this book is the part I'm in, so I thought I would just read that part, or a little bit of it. It's called Desert Song, from Syd Staiti's Seldom Approaches. I drive to the desert and stay in a trailer at the edge of a ridge overlooking a valley. I wake early and open the trailer door to a view of the sunrise. I step outside to greet the land. The silence of the desert turns me inward. My story of the desert will stay there, carrion for the birds. I close the laptop and meet Evan for a drink. Oh, Evan's also in this. I close the laptop and meet Evan for a drink at a new gay bar in downtown Oakland. He's sitting at the end of the bar facing the front door. I approach him and say hi. As I remove my jacket, I see that his feet are resting comfortably on the lowest rungs of the stool next to him, so I place my jacket on the next stool over and sit. The bartender approaches and I order a beer. The side of the mountain is like a waste yard. A mound of tires and car parts litter the view. A house sits in the distance. Large rocks sprinkled with white bird droppings are scattered along the land above the ocean. The gusts follow a path over a lower ridge and up to the peak. From the top, they can see a great distance, tall trees lining a crest beyond, the ocean below. One by one, they arrive, settling around the opening of the cave. You can hear the ocean from here. The air hums. I tell Evan I haven't yet sent this piece to Eric for the latest issue of Americana that he's guest editing for Nick. He shakes his head. He says he sent his 2 weeks ago. I say, Trisha did too. I guess you're the good ones. Evan says, "You are one of the tardy ones." You can almost hear him say that, can't you, in that cadence he speaks with. Tardy ones. Seldom worries he'll be late, but he arrives just on time. He tips his hat so the brim shades sunlight from his eyes. His stance is casual. He looks like he strolled in from a classic noir film, one I've never seen. It's an image renewed for the current moment, but not in that tacky way that resembles a gaudy gentrification of classic looks. It's more messy and sloppy, not quite right, the way a person who is a replica from your subconscious looks as it wakes from a decades-long slumber to find itself alert and reminiscent of some older time, some other dimension, maybe a dream state. Not really there. A segment of yourself you can only see in a particular hue. When Evan first hears me read an early version of this work at Amy's house, he says with reassurance that these figures are poets. I say, "How interesting that you think so, they are not." Now, a year later in our conversation at the bar, he repeats himself, "Oh, that piece of writing with the poets." He says this as I'm in the middle of saying something else, so I don't interrupt myself to correct him. After completing my thought, I want to go back and set the record straight, but I worry that I'll sound defensive, which will do nothing to change his mind, so I let it go. I collect words from everyone and cradle them in my hands, roll them up into a ball and pop them in my mouth, chewing the sky into place above us. As I write the above, I mean as I copy and paste it from previous version, I think, maybe they are poets after all. Who am I to say they're not? What bothers me is not that they might be poets, but that Evan seems to think they're poets modeled on people we know. That's not true. Though there are two poets in this piece modeled on people we know, him and me. I think again about the piece of writing that's not ready to be sent to Eric. It begins like this. Thinking of Syd, sending some love to him. I published a chapbook last November or so. There's a poem in there about that day the sky turned orange, and I thought, that felt so singular, and now it's, all over the East Coast. What a bummer. I'm not going to read that poem, though. I'm going to read another poem called All My Cats. It's also a bummer, but that's okay. All My Cats is a pretty good book by Bohumil Hrabal, translated from the Czech by Paul Wilson, in which he describes in lush elliptical prose his murdering his cats by swinging them against a tree, stuffed in a bag, even those ones he loves like Blackie, the cat with the white feet and the white bib. His wife keeps asking him, what are we gonna do with all these cats? She's a minor character, but gives the book humor and philosophy, which redeem the central conflict about killing cats. I wanted to share this passage with you, so I'm quoting it here. Quote, "And then I remembered a moment captured in newspapers from 1911 when the Turks massacred a village, cut off the heads of their enemies, their victims, put them in sacks and took them to the city, and then had their picture taken with the severed heads. Likewise, American and South Vietnamese soldiers had themselves photographed after they had beheaded their victims, and they'd stuck cigarettes in their lips, just as I had thrown each of the kittens a red geranium." I was in bed after that, thinking about America. Its brutality and wealth was won by genocide that has never ceased. To use the passive voice in this way to recognize at least that human agency maintains systems of violence is a very small thing. I try to start somewhere before sleeping takes over. Agnes meows at the foot of our bed and then lifts herself up on the side of the frame. She jumped all the way up into bed with the two of us who have had our day, long and tedious and silly as it was. It's not something we deserved, and it exhausted us in any case. We're not yet dreaming as Agnes strolls back up and down the length of our bed. When she settles on my arm, you reach over to pet her, and she purrs and closes her eyes with a soft pleasure. And books keep piling up on your side of the room. Art in America, 2 volumes of Ping Pong, Goodbye Dragon Inn, Writing in Space, A College Mystery, Shroud for a Nightingale, 2 novels by George MacDonald, Lydia Davis's Swan's Way, which we met to read aloud as we fell asleep together during the pandemic, The Secret Life of Puppets, Eleanor, or The Rejection of the Progress of Love, Spaces Like Stairs, Work Won't Love You Back, The White Dress, The Skin Chairs, Cruel Optimism, My Mother Laughs, and finally Entangled Life. You've got such great taste. It's cute and kind of a lot, but that's what you're doing on your side of things. I respect it and admire you for it. I don't think you'll have time to read All My Cats, though I wonder if you'd even like it, given the state of the world we're in and the murdering of cats. The steady traffic hums along the freeway nearby, you've shifted your weight, and we all three move with it, finding a balance. Agnes tucks herself into me and my scent more deeply than before. She moves my hand under her neck so that I begin to stroke her vibrating throat. She lets herself ascend, lifting her chin until at last she's reached as far as she can, vulnerable and trusting me again to do the right thing and keep going for as long as I can. I keep petting her. Before other dreams rush in, I want to tell you, but you're sleeping, about how it all ends. I got 2 more poems here to read. They're kind of premised on trying to remember something I can't remember. So I was living in a co-op in college and something bad happened in what I thought was supposed to be a really utopian place. And just meditating on that as a kind of experience of living in California, this utopian place where I don't want bad things to happen, and yet they do. And I don't know, none of that is particularly humorous. I feel like the the premise of the procedure might be humorous in that I was looking at a short story by Kevin Killian in which he takes up lesbian writing and writes as a lesbian. And it really reminded me of being a youth in the 90s and how strongly I identified with lesbian culture, much more than gay culture, and wanting to kind of remember that experience of, identifying as a lesbian. I don't think any of that's on the surface of these poems, but it was, the 90s were a good time even for me as a kid. Anyway, I try to be convincing, the birds in rippling circular movements. I try to notice nothing but a singular cloud of life drifting above, but it keeps unspooling, outlasting my emptiness, and such was my history. This was its particularity, and I copied its gesture until I couldn't bear it any longer, a cloud, and my hands corrected. My posture shifted into the communal life of me and my hands, making the container. I'm still in pain here. I'm thronging masses of wild nerves and wild to take off, and at last the sweetest escape of these lovely songs. The empty fig trees after a long summer. I like to fall in love like the sun is rising over the cold blue ridge. I lift up my legs over the misty edge of what happened and wanted to disappear, holding a sanctuary, or maybe it's just a cloud, but I still have loving the container of me and let it go forward and around each face like the petals turning. This one is pretty, and the lizard is a guide, heating up its heart. This one is quite daring from deep within, and everything grown like this flower here. This basket is woven, or a button stitch into my second-hand garment like honey. It's hardly any more of me in my hands. I'm using my tusks to get further into the sideways motion of the animals I am, the snout and hoof to say with sweetness the pretty petals I am, only a surface, and I try to notice nothing when I look down into the night water, the stars as a sanctuary, the water and the life from this happening, sleeping from the sun. It looks like work. It only looks like my pain is particular, the name for a bird disappearing into heat. I sweat myself apart from nomenclature. I would escape, I would hide experience from myself if I could hide away language or the image apart from the happening as petals of experience. This rose might be cleft, and without clarity, I still have myself, and I was only a shape of a cloud. I noticed bruised by particularity, and this is a confession, the singular hopelessness of my very own life. It happened in the heart, something incalculable, to be so and extinguished, to give into another light of me, to contain it pouring from the eyes. It was so difficult to be worth it truly, and then I turned it over. And this will be the last poem. I'm a fool in listening to the flowers twisting down, and I beg for even more secrets of myself. To be heard so deeply and specific when it breaks open, flowers, everything like my open hands, magenta, dark, and petals. I say the heart is here, a sudden flagless hope like an exploded star. The rain clouds of spring and gray surrounded me. It's what he did to me, just waiting to happen, taking me by the handful of daffodils and loosening roots fragile in the soil. I wish for myself to rip off this t-shirt and let it enter in streams myself down into boots. I look for this weather, for it's green and sideways I'm here, and everything else among lilacs and pinks. The violation was real, but she doesn't live here anymore, of oak trees and the gold of its hillside swaying with meadow, of bay laurel and bramble. Then I tied it around me like a necklace, around in the cold morning air, the kiss, the sky open. I had kept myself going like the ants, gathering the sugar, lily pollen, dust. If I had to give it shape, if I had to mean this, even as unremembered, the waves curling up, singing, and then another word upon my chest, around the body's scars, the tributaries of self, in cursive with memory, the great flesh of me among the wildflowers say, the world is perfect and unacceptable. The poppies and fields are creaturely with pain. I was body containing the unresolved world. The ladybugs and worms sideways with everything spread to the horizon. I moved into California, agriculture and wilderness up against one another and spinning life around, the fingers to kiss me. And if it wasn't pleasure, and if it ended badly, purple lupin flowering between Scotch broom and in the palms of me, a spike of Indian brush shocked and braided up with its lurid and orange up through the hills, I followed her. And sunlit at the edges of lace, I was lost to the pursuit of what has happened. The image and the sound of bees gathering him who held me like this, unwanted and unfocused, is the outside image only. The animals, I've seen their tracks and followed behind, and tracking filth me by the throat, and he held me backwards through the bramble. There's this hole, see it rotate through me to heal myself openly. I hold on to patience, gathered the face of him. There is no secret here. Empathy and ambivalence to rise in the morning. It's not more loving, it's another world. My death, but more. Thank you.
All right, hello again. Thank you to Green Arcade for hosting innumerable memorable readings. I read virtually through Green Arcade in the fall of 2020, and I had the pleasure of reading alongside Brian Blanchfield, who's in Moscow, Idaho at the time, and Bruno Dario, a fantastic Mexican poet who appeared alongside our friend Kit Schluter. Bruno passed away in October. I don't think he even made it to 30. He, I believe, had a brain tumor that had afflicted him since adolescence. So I would like to dedicate my reading to Bruno. The good news is our friend Kit Schluter is finishing some translations of Bruno's 3 books, and Ugly Duckling will be publishing them in the fall of next year. And this is one poem of Bruno's that Kit translated. Will the cranes return to you again? I appear without wanting to. Will the cranes return to me again? Rainfall, the tide fill the 4 square meters of my soul to the brim. I'm looking at my dress. I imagine at a distance the clothes I left behind when I left, the skin of dust, layers and layers of skin until the dress becomes another. Is to travel to leave blood behind, to scatter it? To travel is to die a little, or to abandon death, to leave it waiting in the pocket we choose not to bring along. So it's impossible to return. One never returns from travels. The house is dark right where we left it, but it gives the feeling of entering a home unknown. We said goodbye to the house we left behind when we left, even if we come home to it now. Where do we come home to? Spirits. Is it true that a poem comes not from the lived image, but from the one we dream? Bruno insisted on going out drinking the night I met him with Kit, and the bill came and he insisted on paying. And he said, in my one hand, I have the Communist Manifesto, and in my other, my credit card. And he slaps it on the table. He had recently returned from Paris, and he was insistent that he developed a cold sore from kissing Oscar Wilde's grave. And I was just like, wasn't entirely sure if he was putting me on or not. So it's readings for Bruno. Metamorphoses, it's a book, well, I told you what the book was about. Animals, ecology, San Francisco, Rome. One eats while the other watches. Our souls are 2 crows observing us from a branch. Meanwhile, swelling, receding in life forms, embryos, stillborns, carrion, we're recomposing each other, transcribing, reciting, dripping to roots. My body dispersed, reformulated by others. My insides turned to a foliage, a riot of blooms, while mine become a poet's. We reach the moment where we cannot remember whose mouth these words are coming from, the words encouraging us to life, originating us in this tree. One bird, a crow for now, has a belief in everything, even the invisible. The other has libidinous syntax and a nervous lump in its throat. They might only be breathing to select the contours of our destruction. Call it perfect disarray, dispersing the origin we enter, a thread through every existence. Knowing so, provided that life lasts, is a diffusion of light through land, sea, and spacescapes. Space turning upon itself, disputable unity, void into void, neutral waves constellate species. I've been animals. I've slept under the eyes of mountain ranges and ocean depths. I've been complimented on my school, brood, cauldron, and pounce. I have caught mice that keep Kafka awake. I've suckled twins who establish an empire. I've destroyed the robot imposter that enters my territory. I've begged tourists for snacks and friendly scratches behind my antlers. I've stormed the Prado and flown endlessly before the Goyas. I've preened myself until the sky goes gray and I turn to glass. I've glided low and parallel to rivers. I've even had other species answer when calling for a mate. I failed to recognize Dionysus, so he turned me into a dolphin. I regurgitated mango to resuscitate a wasp. I've drunk from the corner of a human eye. I've lifted my snout above the pit. I've eaten fetuses, then napped in dead leaves. I've hopped to magic mountains, bright vermilion boulders. I've rubbed noses in cul-de-sacs off tight, damp tunnels. I've been rejected from my herd in blazing salt flats. I felt the shape of my bones under my scales, plumes, pelt. I've greeted humankind as its distant predecessor, strange and exiled. I've been metamorphosed and hunted by the dogs I trained. I've been lassoed and bound when elsewhere I'm so revered no driver dares honk at me. I've stared down Thoreau, who likens my head to a mix of squirrel and bear. I've dragged a slice of pizza into the 2nd Avenue F-train tunnel. I've been flipped around and sheared by that hick more than I would like to admit. I've played dead and admired the living. I've tasted an apple unfinished by Hervé Guibert dying of AIDS. I've nested in streets of radioactive waste, branches, vines. I've sung at your ear's upper limit. I've grunted and squealed over Percy Shelley's recitation. I've led processions wearing the mask of my ancestor Anubis. I've sung to be heard by exiled Ovid. He stopped writing. I have not yet won you, so what is this work worth? There's some shadow pieces that are accompanying this reading, shadow pieces of the book. This is titled Cock-Ups. You gasp into consciousness, receiving speed in your limbs, bounding four-legged. Emerging from the river covered in snakes, edging me lightheaded, amyl nitrate-nosed, opening passages and rooms in caves and dreams. Your feather scarlet markings resembling stains betray crimes you commit far into the future. In a panic, I bite off my testicles and throw them at my suitors. Wide-hipped with an egg timer on every sperm, in contractions to deliver an ecosystem around which images can congregate. Ram's horns emerging, curling from a boy's skull. You're unaware you've been like that. Horses and tornadoes tasked with imitating each other. Having poured out the remaining water for libation, Alexander, he had a great desire to see me slick with sweat and undressed. His ears perked and turned toward my footsteps. He moaned, and a river broke from his chest to pull me in. I undergo these mutations, my heartbeat shaking the anatomical theater until it collapses, and I'm left on my own to sew myself up and bound back to my burrow. A briar grows from my navel and tangles itself lazily between your fingers, typing my eulogy. Images from an ascetic's wet dream flirt in trees and at urinals. You are the dog that curls into a world. I pull a feathery nerve from my arm and wrap it around my finger like I'm wetting my sensitivity. So it bears repeating. So much speculation. I had to write this poem to put all the talk to rest. Ryan's giving me a knowing smile. All right, you've been wondering, this is why Madonna is not in my pantheon. I was kicked out of her concert. I'm still so ashamed. I snuck from the balcony to the floor and I touched her just lightly when she danced up the aisle. Her shoulders spanned my two hands. The next day I told Bruce Boone about how I lost control and also my wallet when Madonna's bodyguards 86'd me. Oh, and Madonna's really tiny? Bruce, like a classicist, said she must be from southern Italy. I feel like Ovid on his worst day. I feel like young Ovid on his worst day. Young? Worst day. Young. Worst day. Madonna was breathtakingly beautiful, even vulnerable. Couture black lace blouse, wig of taut brown curls. It affirmed my love for her, though not as I would like. She's only the richest person I've ever touched. She's not even in my pantheon anymore. Don't let the thread of my life fall into your stagnant pool, your urinal, your pile of scraps and rinds. Vines may circle my face and my petals fade, but my pick still hits the strings, my hand a cloud along the power lines of your empty skyline. How the raven became black, how a whale fell in love with the cloud and rain became their contact. Sunbeams dropped as fishing lines, catching previously untasted fish. A new attitude arrives from my future self. Your silhouette is visible on the prow of a departing ship. The bandage or blindfold slips below my eyes. My tongue is a candle lit at both ends. My heart resisting cremation. Bruises along my bodies are mistaken for orifices, and my suitors, magnificently aroused, circle me. A radius like a labyrinth, a hawk-faced child holding a balloon at the zoo. Reading about the cawing of a crow while a crow caws. What book should I pick up next? At what point do the gods absent themselves from our world's affairs? Jesus, won't you lay down beside me? Jesus, won't you lay down beside me? Jesus, won't you lay down beside me as the corpse of a fox decaying in time lapse? Weeks pass by in blink of eye. My attempts to hold these shapes are like that fox. Its maggots and gases holding up for a couple days its fox-like form. By multiplying, their house like the church collapses. Lay down beside me, a diva in a sequined apron. I became a map. Seducing my reader. For you, it's a rotten fish I rolled in to demonstrate time. Bundling prey silky when worst poets offer decoys in faddish language. My singing slickens canopy nests, spotted by eyes, waking gardens, blind sensation. I blush watching you read me. Put down my book so I can approach and pulsate with experience and observation. You've removed the scales from my eyes? Fine. Now remove the scales that cover my body, then give me legs and arms so I don't need to slither around. Fish-like and floating in the two rivers of my mother's arms. DNA of the crow I was metamorphosed into. Where's my new crow society, my new murder? And where is the trial for the murderer of my previous form? The one I enjoyed and ached in until this moment. This book has some devotional poems to them. And this one is to Dionysus. And it's in memory of Roberto Colasso, who also passed away in October. My plea to Apollo failed. Hear how I don't speak in hexameter, the indicator of his possession? Maybe it's fine and my poems will be good enough, but not yet. In India, you confronted the Hindu belief that meters of verse are the cattle of gods. You shook your head no, and favoring chaos, you declared war on them. Maybe I need your derangement to pace my breath, fill my lungs to rupture, honeyed, herbal, scarred. I'm prepared. I've fought lung ailments, kinda like Kafka and Keats. At their graves, I buried my pencil. Funny that each had an FB. Felice Bauer, me Fanny Braun. I cruise parks and baths for my own FB, drinking wine excessively to possess and ingest another. I'll compromise on Metamorphoses. Olympians gave their bodies to common people. They wanted to encounter death, so they turned their asses to our groins. I would hate to be in a god's position, immortal, unfeeling, hoping to learn their opposite by bottoming. Look farther west. Because San Francisco has no winter, a perennial spring will gush from your torso. A viscous liquid like nectar, a vine from Sonoma that chokes trees and the poor. If you answer me, I'll raise a statue of you in Dolores Park, where kids fresh out of Stanford get day drunk on White Claw. They'll lift you into the cloud, the domain of Apollo, your rival. He will seethe like an ant's mound, and he will bow down helplessly in that way he does when mounting a pubescent boy. Living flesh won't be transfixed, no, but data will. Immortal, endlessly reckless, almost your double. To break into a Dallas museum, to smash Greek antiquities in solidarity with moths in Egyptian cotton, termites and Edo period idols, like a vendetta across millennia, actualized through doctrines of reincarnation that the Greeks long ago refuted. In a Pompeii latrine, I write, for good head, call I. It's the number of a rival poet. Hooking up in a late night alley, we're stunned to realize our cocks are exactly alike, same girth and curve. The sight of these genital doppelgangers loosens our grip on selfhood. I hesitate, but you look away, close your eyes, and push me down to my knees. Filled with regret for dismembering you, I swim downriver to retrieve all your scattered parts. Despite my best efforts, we're missing your left arm, right foot, nose, and unfortunately your cock. Our surroundings offer immediate replacements: a branch, a wasp's nest, a honeycomb, a marble nose lobbed off by some vandal, but I'm not sure which goes where. And then we'll end at the beginning, the origins of the world. Which I always think is at the end of the book, but it's not quite. Hints of heaven were impossible to inscribe in early humans who fought thanklessly. They were earthlings ignorant of etymology. To capture their existence for the future, they attempted life masks, but I've heard they were unfit to fill their form. Their material required millennia to cool and harden. These subjects could not be stilled. Poets don't write anymore about the origin of the world. Why is that? I guess the world stopped recognizing poets' births, so we stopped addressing the subject. The world asked its other occupants to participate in its creation instead. Others more agreeable or practical stepped in, then poets forgot the topic, or we just became its undecided satellites. I thank you so much.
So many people in here. Thank you for coming, everyone. And those were two such great readings. Thank you very much. Let's see about this. I think that's, so you can all hear me? That's all right. Okay. It's really kind of inconceivable that Green Arcade won't be here by July 1st. It's so heartbreaking.
It's early July 18th.
Okay, it's equally inconceivable, but thanks for the precision. Yeah, endless thanks to Patrick and everybody at Green Arcade for having poets here and the best books anyone could ever want to look at in a bookstore. Thanks so much. I'm going to start reading excerpts from my book or my manuscript, I guess I should say, Guide School. Guide School has, I think, 5 sections, and the first is Abracadabra, the second is A New House of Dust, then Sun Worship, The White Jew, and Dr. Shaman. It has a lot of prose in it, which I won't be reading, but I'm going to read from the first section, Abracadabra, and a few pages from Sun Worship. The triplets set off in opposite directions, one crowned by fire, one enthroned in water, one in a halo of air. So thread their maps to thaumaturgic wish, like Strabo, a mercenary of motion. The triplets can't be identical, though they trick you to start rivers, rumors, a raptor, among the migrating birds bearing GPS. The paragogs look up. So light the wick. Let quandary burn in the foundry. Ash Chronicle. Nouns drop out. Muscles slacken, spasm. Organs prolapse. Taste buds dim. Evidence collectors crowd around, reading rings on fallen trees. And archaeologic as taxonomy, skeletal locations minus viscera. The wish to be disembodied is the wish to escape history. Memorats. This feeling that I is really the last person who reads or writes. Julia Drescher. Dark tourists of Bessarabia, as for access, my faces, only imitation, slide on loose scree of mirror neurons. Not theirs either, river, creek, not our portage or your reply, though I hear someone changed their mind, someone said no one's home, hung up, inverted the letters, skeletal, of those who carry, does recall build muscle, or like a baby switched at birth, whose faces evade relation, just like we, nocturnal and diurnal, cross paths invisible in light and night, bear, stalker, coyote, surveyor, so maintain days unstable, family, a viscous engine oil, fluid accusation, predator tales. Targum. Rememberer, not theorizer, cauldron, not container, funnel, not vessel, silent but walking, cheesecloth seamstress, not ledger, Ouija, not GPS, make of me a vat, search party, crucible, call them in, augurer, legend, not map, place from which, let me be a dragamon for those between, explain nothing, show fingers of hands around the shovel, chaperone, genie of robbed rubbing, conductor, keep me from guidance, guide me to usher, going back, royal, time, simultaneous, issue ID, but not murmur appellation, your silence unbroken, steward, not owner, advise us, temporary vanguard, come forward, design, not letters, enter a pattern, repeated path of the plow and the cobble stitch, be my attendant in distillation, offer my arm up, convoy, monitor the drip docent into pioneer blueprints, let rudder and scout escort. The place from which dwells on top of whose, the not visible location on whose table, hungry to name, infinite regress into hunger for encounter as encounter. Rules and taboos for the handling of language, because language is an element, fire or water, burns or drowns, which makes me robber robbed. Like the Ukrainians flooding the town of Demidov before the Russians could destroy it. Just as in post-Nazi Moldova, the thick walls of the good house built by Jews was coveted, but the current non-Jewish inhabitants tried to never mention the former. It was said the former were killed because they were clever. They were not welcome when they returned from hiding or the camps. Their homes were occupied, their tombstones pavers for roads. Just as a Palestinian knocks to discover which Jews, Russian, Moroccan, Yemeni, Polish, were now living in their old family home. Leila Abu Lugod. An apology is not a monument. A correspondence or partial similarity between things is dysgraphia in its similarity to dyslexia. To write about the invisible is not apology. An analogy is an apology between things that can never fully correspond. Dysgraphia may be what Jews call sacred, a reversal of things that are only partly similar. Partial slip, shadow caster, exhale, boulder, write on paper in skim milk, hold to fire, and words appear. The constellators read by analogy, so the pressure of search forces another firmament to surface. Kishinev, shell, rock and stone buildings, sunflowers, grapes, apples, plums, pears, apricots, all kinds of vegetables, green fields of wheat next to black soil, roads pitted. The place refers to other places, calls to another, has its own volition. A name wants. The way naming the named can make a named one hungrier for more. The endless hunger greed of language, and if the name is sacred, some Jews require that the paper on which it is written be burned or thrown into a geniza, or never spoken as spelled. Trace vein, delicate grass, trample, run in circle, surround, beware binoculars, escape, finger, trace lobe. From the present leach fields, conflicting accounts of those who fished beside us swimmers, every organ a letter, body afloat on the buoyant questions. Woke up with Manish Tana in my head. Of coniferous trees there, oaks here, I too list wishward, beckon to turn into landscape, be baptized or die, cause the Black Plague or perish from it. Vilna, 1316, first mention of a large Jewish settlement. To show the stateless, that is the job of the escort, to look straight at her, the sun. And a few from Sun Worship. Drash, drive, flame gatherer, sundial tent under whose eternal light scribes spin graven inscriptions. Is sun not plasma, worshippers of stars and constellations, not a calendar, an itinerary? No wonder the four seasons rotate, belief, letter, word. To pray is to turn. If you don't know the sequence, lost, look up, open the ark, stand, firmament of our, let there be history, anti-anarchy, invites astronomy's astrology, stretches the sky bow back, the unfixed pursues, buries food for future use. Find them by their hidden sustenance, remains of a deer means mountain lion, but I would eat it too, if eye to eye with the wild boar. Survived the night highway crossing, a sinking ship, fell from a moving car, showed us his false teeth trophy. To put out or fix heritage, that, fire, water carriers, bring it to the conflagration again and again to extinguish inheritance. Plaster of Paris tracks cast in paraffin or bring a candle, erasable monuments, rewritable compressions, invisible, injury is not what you thought, not even your own, the pain on rising. My is a learned conscription. So now from Burns, this new book, newish book. Well, the time has come, I guess, a time I've been dreading and looking forward to read from this with Evan Kennedy in the room. So this piece in this book called The Wind in Her Daughtership's Majesty, a Mask, Anti-Mask, really owes a lot to Terra Firmament, Evan's book, and its rhythms and some other things you'll see, maybe. So here goes. The wind is my mascot, I shall not want, but even the wind is owned by names and struggles against its hand. Wind, wind, the wind so high, rain keeps traveling in the sky. So fine, so pretty, she's the girl from the Golden City. Los Angeles, Heliopolis, Gold Rush, San Francisco. Willa, Cleo, Emma, Zara, Sarah, in a line, in a row, in a clutch. Goncha, Ciarita, Helen, Angeliki, Eleni, Evangelia, Tatiani. Athens, Istanbul, Barcelona. Rosa, Carolina, Charlotte, Celine, Lucinda, Vasiliki. Line them up, mix them up. Wind, the wind, snow comes scattering from the sky. In mourning or just likes black, on the prowl or just likes cleavage, making it up as they go along, picking through the debris to make temporary deals. How can they know they daunt in their bright efficiency, raise fear in those fumbling to get closer? Do I or don't, will, won't, rolling the dice and watching the watchers as they promenade. Sonia, Olivia, Petra, Katelina, struggling against the hand of their wind. What's in a girl's sugar eyes? Yes, she could, might, or would. With my heavy watch on, I take my father's pulse, turn to deflect the protagonist's punch. 1. The X-remunerations, after Evan Kennedy. Exalted in sick diversion from rather escape hate so many lanes it offers to the riders I like, the flagged spinning his bike spokes past the city haunts 30 and more years, the overlay of memory facade. Who cares the time doth so ripen rot? On 2 or 4 wheels, cruise the was-will, cashew held feeding from the feed bag. As when I spun and sped through Los Angeles, Wilshire, Sunset Boulevards, helmetless and dauntless, because only one known person had so far died. And he off at a golf course, having a buffet lunch forever, tasteless not only to my young ears, but also to the palms whose salute eternal kept them putting. What a green of no return. What a grandfather and greater. Gave the possibility of talk over breakfast, interest in one another, man and girl. When he was gone, I saw him everywhere. From my bike, salvation in a city where buses kept you waiting for hours. You there in the sun so far away from your own hometown, hey, what were you thinking not using sunscreen or nursing and inhaling cool menthols? Put on your tabbies, the sand is hot. Smear of coral lipstick gash on the grandmother's mouth, dissociated entirely from her words, and being a dawning understanding that in the grandmother and others, there were at least 2, the one present to an audience and the one who forgot about them. And there were some who never forgot, reapplying theirs immediately after a burger and even on the way to bed, and some even fewer who never thought of them even when they were there. This all began to move out of the landscape, creating a fore and background of the kinds and with whom affinity could form, seeing that there was too much attention to the lips, yet a fascination with that sport, and those who excelled at it, exponentially drawing the audience and sometimes us to them. Up to whose judgment was it, uncle of disgust, arbiter of armpit hair? Not really next, but a long road of digestion, for you girls to be perked, for the nice to be nursed, for you gals to be paid and to choose who you lay. When the roll was called, mine was unpronounceable and certainly without correction from my court, a discipline of the vigilant whose mind already preferred the window to the chalkboard, always on an errand to the sensation of the day, wind in face, muscle in rhyme, back up before, back into, first light, shallows, tracks, slip and stay, a prowess of element, traverse, I recall, hands off the handlebars too. He will understand how it was also my vocation. All I ever wanted was skill through sun momentum when I was that hurry downhill. First lie. A door will open in the air, undisturbed by experience. Pollen into honey, honey into captivity, remedy. First love, the banal replacement one of another. If the first stands, the flailings of the next may be survived. First launch, spoon-fed itinerary from a very young age. That the pearl is their oyster should be no surprise. Are all their resemblances effaced in the heat of embrace? Or the train stations of the cross, trinkets in their fists, cannot escape the kinship whose trace draws them along their course, where sleeveless trials present as decision. They know that beds do not make them local. O kilo and kilometer conversion be a festival of final exam. First sight. Already in the missing beat, voluntary vertigo, the lead-off leg and the couple. First hesitation, second dissonance, disappearance. Behind, suspense, summer backs potion poured, lips on the glass, on the watch the friend, slack spines not theirs, then trade vigilances and lord it over. Now it's their turn to rush to the rape and reward fields. Sharpened, they lean into the keel, discipline their sail. A little secret something or someone polishes the day, while the harness is a chosen diadem. By their shoe choices, you will know them. What is that rustling the trees? Who is there? What is that blowing my hair? What makes the sea move? Who are you? What goes forever more? The wind. The wind will blow until the very end. It will rustle the trees and blow my hair and move the sea and blow forevermore the wind. And the end of that piece, placeholders for futures. Do we dream of new captions or underwrite other lyrics? Do we wish for a safe house, excise the lines plane ticket? Please do tell us what to do. Here, start over, tell me what you are sleeping under. Quilt of weight and promise. Come with the bees and talk in a circle. Heathen cast or pretend another. I'd like to give the ark, but we have labored in the trenches and wish to save you so much grovel. You may win a key to the golden city and hope when you arrive the gold is still sun. Keep staring back. We do lose our way. Disabused of rest brings ambush. If something is broken, sing to it, of a hearth or a hunt or a menu unrent. No, there's a lot I don't know in your idiom, but still, to narrow the width between the said and the felt is an isthmus of belief the boat moves toward. It's the leaves blowing, not footsteps behind you. It's the dressed up but still hungry. In the valley, so low hang your head over. Hear the wind, the wish made of air, that has undergird so much, fed the stern grasp, would launch scores of vagabond bicyclists, fleeing fates so, left the family compound with a bowl and a spoon, asking, who do we do what for? On her I wait, mundane glory, star of our skit, for the long nights awake next to your sleep, who's truncated, who's transfused by second amnesia, longing for night company. A girl is singing into the camera. A camera is putting hands in her hair. I saw you toss the kites on high, blow birds about the sky, beast of field and tree, flowers in the summer, fires in the fall. I would de-teach these poles from tendons enfeebled in the outer lands, light up my spine to align with that tree trunk vertebrae to vertical while the sky calls roll. The wind or a car coming or water rushing. So Flora, bride of the west wind, is it really you who controls all flowers? Beyond doer and done, outside the dyad is not give over, not in. Like the new moon, the old forecast in her arms, weather of soup, plans, cell tower censure. Badge winds, Aeolus, Anticlea, Antiope, Phaedra, pick human fruit in a cafe, choice counters non-consent. Come mares, vultures, hens, women, let them say we are wanton recipients, guilty of acting while posing as oxygen. Boreas and Zephyrus, nymph sluts, immaculate cross-pollination, allurement or attunement, music of the third, you fall in love with love, not a shadow to soothe and regulate. Call upon triage nurse, catnip, shift work, I confess, incapacity to serve. Rest nervous system, shed plaque heart with dusk and the queen of wands rise over the hill, the desire to intervene like blood on her hands. Once again, you and the point are complete strangers, and not enough of too much has been said. All, when the wind blows from the south, that which no canvas sails could withstand, undress and conceive by the wind, give birth to girls. So thirsty tonight. Okay, I'm going to end with with just the beginning of the play in the book in Burns. And the play is called Motion Picture Home. And here's the note in the book about Motion Picture Home. Kevin Killian directed Motion Picture Home, which was written at his request and performed for a Poets Theater Jubilee in San Francisco in 2022. Margaret Tedesco, who is here with us today, it's amazing to have her here, played the woman. Wayne Smith, are you here, Wayne? He said he might come, okay. Wayne Smith recorded the sound, and Kota Izawa coordinated and played the sound during the performance. Tanya Hollis, Taylor Brady, Kevin Killian, and Norma Cole, who I think is here. Yeah, amazing. Okay. Performed the offstage voiceovers, including that of the teleprompter. In addition to being a live human voice, the teleprompter character was a huge machine, not a phone app, lugged onto the stage. Oh, and in the back of the book are QR codes, and you can actually play the voiceovers that I'm going to play some of to you on your phone, if you wish. So, okay, where's the play? Here. So I'm going to read you the first few pages, and then I'm going to play you some of the voiceovers, which were recorded, as I said. So in the play, voiceover 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some voiceovers are live, but delivered from off stage. Some are recorded. Live voiceover 1 is the same as recorded voiceover 1, etc. Teleprompter as both machine with screen and live voice character. Time Lord, Sir Sandford Fleming, inventor of standardized time with an English accent. The Little Dog. The play is read off stage with the exception of the woman character who occasionally speaks when on stage. First, it's dark on stage. The teleprompter lights up and continuously scrolls these words on its monitor screen. And all the motion came home, and all the moving parts came to rest. The stage lights come up, the set can be seen. A big TV monitor sits near the back, and a slide of a big touch-tone phone keypad with large digits for the sight impaired is projected on the back wall. The sound of TV static, a channel gone off the air. The teleprompter to the side of the stage. I'm just going to read the characters without saying who it is. Was that the final time? No, rest keeps refusing to be final, keeps being interrupted. I want to see rest. Can you make it visible? As visible as, you're too hungry for action. It's like an anorexia for motion. Get dressed. Orders? All dialogue is assignment. You expect me to respond? Listen, I know how to shut you up. Tell me everything. You might think I am. You will expect to see something, as usual. You will think I'm giving you something to see. Now get ready for bed. Come on, get dressed, get ready for bed, put on your rain boots. Not orders, schedules, itineraries. This is how the train runs. This is how the water boils. This is how I, the teleprompter, tell and tell and tell and tell. So I'm going to play some of the voiceovers to you now, if Evan and I can figure this out. I'm determined. Just bear with us for a second here.
Let's make sure. Yeah. Okay.
This is a song called Vice Grip. Be you in the tenderness, the high art of character, the invincible shield of caring, a weapon from the sky against being dead.
Did you all hear that? Yeah. Okay, good.
You have to rush. Stories require less pressure than plays require eternity. We've sent for one. Delivery is slow these days.
Which raises the question, can you die twice? Can you plan it that way? What shouldn't be said here and what shouldn't pass through the passage of the mouth?
The prophecy usually comes in the beginning, but I can see it on the horizon now.
Nervous system, the Geiger counter goes haywire. I'm coming home. Big box. Contagion is love. What does willing to go toward look like after amputation? Sedation. What has happened? The severe blow to the head of a dried up river named disappointment, being contagiously. So reread the prophecy from this rickety shack. Not here, therefore, there. Not contingent, but related. Standing in the gulf between the done and the done. Tertiary. D's for dare. Or D is for gaslight. Loves gaslighting. And anyone who would say no to that is fill in the blank. I am losing this space. How will I hold on to seeing it? It is fleeing as I write.
Metamorphoses say that he is for unauthorizing one act or say to suspend one passively active suspension. The ocean does not try to make the water.
My turn. On my 44th passage in 1845, we, the Fleming brothers, nearly died on one fearful night in the midst of a North Atlantic gale. I took readings of wind speed and direction, calculated the ship's heading and time, and determined that we might not survive until morning. I inscribed this silver assessment, adding a declaration of faith in God and a confession of filial gratitude, bottled the note and threw it overboard. Naturally, my life being one long monument to industry and good fortune, the bottle was picked up on a North Devon beach and delivered to my parents not many months after I'd sailed with Peterborough, my first Canadian club.
Is that turned up as loud as it can be?
It is,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. All right, one last one, and
Would
then...
it be better to just hold the laptop to the microphone? The laptop speaker.
That probably would be better, yeah.
Okay, well, then I'll disconnect, I guess. I'm only going to play one more anyway.
I take advice from you. Try this.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Oh, hold that. Well, then we'll just play it off. All right. One last voiceover soundtrack here. Let's see. Don't know why it won't play. It's weird. Can you hear that at all? Can you hear that? Okay, we'll just stop then. Thank you, everybody.